He threw the glass before I even finished my sentence. The water hit the wall at 6:47 in the morning. Choi Byung-ho, the kind of man who had never been told no in a boardroom, a hotel suite, or anywhere else, was pointing his finger 3 inches from my face, telling me he would end my career before his morning tea got cold. I did not flinch. I did not apologize. I said, "You have 42 minutes before you walk onto that stage in front of 400 executives. So the real question is not who you are. The real question is who you plan to be in the next 42 minutes. The room went completely silent. And my name is Amara Osei. And everything that mattered started right there. I am Ghanaian. I grew up in Accra, studied event management in London, and somehow, through a combination of stubbornness, skill, and refusing to shrink when rooms expected me to, I became one of the most sought-after international events directors in East Asia. I have been based in Seoul for 4 years. I run high-stakes corporate summits, not cocktail receptions, not product launches. The kind of events where the wrong microphone at the wrong moment can collapse a $1 billion sponsorship deal before the first session ends. I am good at it, genuinely, ruthlessly good. My assistant Nari once told me, "Uni, you don't solve problems. You arrive before they do." She was not wrong. But here's what nobody tells you about being that good at something. People stop asking if you're okay. They see the flawless rooms, the seamless timelines, the crises that disappeared before anyone noticed them. And they assume it costs you nothing. I'll let them assume that. The Seoul Global Innovation Forum was my biggest contract of the year. 5 days, 400 delegates, 14 nationalities, 21 sponsors. A charity gala on the final night projected to raise over 2 billion won for education programs across sub-Saharan Africa and rural South Korea. 6 months of preparation. The Lotte World Tower Conference Center had never looked more perfect. And I had not prepared, not even slightly, for what I was about to feel. 3 men arrived together on the morning of day 1. I noticed them the way I always noticed everything, quickly and without making it obvious. Senior executives from one of Seoul's oldest conglomerate groups, attending as lead international delegates. Im Soo-hyun. Effortlessly warm, the kind of charm that felt completely unrehearsed, someone who laughed like he had never once been uncomfortable in a room in his life. Bae-jun SEO, still precise, watching everything with the patience of someone who was always measuring, always collecting data, always thinking 3 steps ahead. And Kwon Taeyong, the quiet one. No announcements, no performance, just attention. Deep, unhurried, total attention. I clocked all 3 in under 30 seconds. Then my earpiece exploded with a disaster and I forgot about them completely. Or I thought I did. By 7:15 a.m., I was managing 4 simultaneous emergencies. The keynote speaker, Professor Chukwemeka Ease, a globally respected economist who had been on every summit banner for 3 months, had his flight from Lagos diverted due to a technical issue. He was grounded. The summit opened in 80 minutes. My first phone rang. Our lead sponsor, Hansung Ventures, was threatening to pull 300 million won in funding because their branded installation was, allegedly, 4 meters from where they expected it. My second phone rang. The imported seafood for the closing gala had been held at Incheon Port on a customs documentation issue. Gone. Nari came sprinting around the corner with a folder pressed to her chest. "Uni, pick one." "Already did," I said. "All 3. I pulled the backup keynote list. Only speakers confirmed inside Seoul, breathing Lotte Tower air right now. No video link. No remote feed. No mobbies. In 4 minutes, I had a name. Dr. Song Ji-yeon, a Harvard-trained economist already registered as a delegate on the 22nd floor, with credentials that actually exceeded the original speaker. I called her room myself. She said yes before I finished explaining. I walked into the sponsor meeting alone. No nari. Noble fare. I sat across from Hansung's director, placed my tablet on the table, and turned the screen toward him before he could begin his prepared speech. "The sign placement agreement," I said, "measured this morning. Compliant to the centimeter." He looked at it. "However," I continued, "I want Hansung's presence here to feel like the investment it is. So here's what I can offer that was not in the original contract." I swiped to the next screen. A branded installation at the main tower entrance. Every international executive arriving that morning would pass directly through it. He uncrossed his arms. "When?" he said. 20 minutes, I said. He nodded. "That works." I was back on the floor with 16 minutes to spare. By day 3, the 3 executives had stopped pretending they were there only for the sessions. Soo-hyun found me near the corridor outside the main hall. He had a glass of water and the expression of someone who had been waiting and was trying to make it look accidental. "You are not going to pretend you weren't waiting there," I said. He laughed, genuine, completely unguarded. "No, I absolutely was waiting." I looked at my watch. 45 seconds. He accepted that without complaint. Then he said, directly, no cushioning. I run a crisis team. 12 people. Dedicated systems. Protocols built over a decade. He looked at me steadily. He did what they do. Alone. Before anyone in this building had finished their first coffee. I said, I also fixed the audio fault and pulled a sponsor back from the edge. But I appreciate the acknowledgement. He laughed again. Easy. Real. Not performed for anyone. I noticed. June SEO found me in the service corridor behind the main stage, crouched beside a cable routing panel, working through a connection fault with one of the AV crew. He said, without greeting, the feedback fault this morning. You identified it in under 10 seconds. 8, I said, standing. Ow! Full technical walkthrough at 5 a.m. I knew every potential failure point before anyone else arrived. He was quiet. Then, you prepared for failure before you prepared for success. Success, I said, is what happens when your failure preparation is thorough enough. Something shifted in his expression, not dismissal. More like he was turning the idea over the way an engineer examines a structure, looking for the load-bearing point. Then he said quietly, I leave the day after tomorrow. I want to be honest with you before I go. June SEO. I know the timing is impossible. I know the distance between what I'm asking and what you are carrying right now is not small. He paused. What I do not know is whether any of that matters more than every conversation we have had this week. I said, I need to finish this cable check. I know, he said, and stepped back. But just before his footsteps left the corridor, he said, some things cannot be measured, but they can be trusted. That is what I am learning. Taeyong never came to find me. He simply appeared in the right places. Moved aside once, just slightly without being asked, so I could pass through a crowded entrance without slowing. Such a small thing. The kind of thing most people would not even notice doing. I noticed everything. And on the terrace on day 4, he finally said the thing that stopped me mid-step. What your mother told you, he said. About making something better without making the person feel worse. I turned slowly. I heard you tell Nari that, he said. I was passing the corridor. I was not trying to listen. He paused. It stayed with me. Why? I asked. Because most people with your level of discipline, he said, use it for themselves. Their outcomes. Their results. He met my eyes. You use it for everyone else. I said, does that bother you? He said, that no one uses it for you. Something cracked open in me that I was not ready for. I woke up on the morning of the gala to Nari's voice in my earpiece and a printed article in my hand. The headline read, Foreign Event Director at Center of Executive Attention. Seoul's most talked about summit story. My full name. My photo. Pulled from the official summit registration. Framed to suggest I had spent 5 days cultivating the personal interest of 3 senior Korean executives for professional advantage. 800 shares before sunrise. I sat with it for exactly 30 seconds. Then I said, find one factual error. There's always one. Nari scanned it. They called you an event coordinator in paragraph 2. You were the events director. Push back on that formally. Request a correction. It gives us a foothold without engaging with the rest of it. I walked out of the operations room and into the day. Soo-hyun came to find me first. It had nothing to do with my team, he said. I told him I already knew. He looked at me and said something I did not expect. These things follow women in ways they do not follow men. I have watched careers in this industry get reshaped by whispers that had nothing to do with performance. I know, I said. Does that make you want to stop? No, I said. Good, he said quietly. Don't. That evening, during the gala itself, Choi Byung-ho, the man who had thrown the glass at 6:47 on day 1, reappeared. Drunk, voice rising, standing directly in front of Park Yong-chul, the summit's lead international partner whose continued investment was worth 2 billion won to the program's future. I was on the wrong side of the terrace. Too far. Too many people between us. I pushed through and I was not going to make it in time. And then, without coordination, without any signal, all 3 men moved at once. Soo-hyun appeared at Byung-ho's elbow and redirected his anger into what looked, from the outside, like an enthusiastic industry debate. June SEO positioned himself between the confrontation and the nearest camera crew. He did not block them, obviously. He simply occupied the space, asked a journalist a question about Korean infrastructure investment, and made sure there was nothing worth filming. And Taeyong walked directly to Park Yong-chul, quietly, unhurriedly, as if he had planned to speak with him all evening, and made him feel valued before the hurt could settle into something permanent. 3 men. 3 completely different responses. All of them correct. I stood still after resolved. Then I realized something. Taeyong had known Park Yong-chul mattered. I had mentioned it to Nari 3 days earlier. He took a real risk supporting this summit. He deserves to have a good evening. I had said it in passing. Taeyong had been in that corridor. He had been listening. He had been carrying it. After the gala emptied, I walked the terrace one final time. Taeyong was standing at the railing, alone, looking at Seoul glittering below us. He said, "I came to this summit because of a name on a document." I stopped walking. My team prepared a delegate brief. Standard preparation. But something about the way it described you, the decisions you had made, the problems you had solved quietly, the way you protected things without ever asking to be seen for it. He turned to look at me. I needed to know if the person on paper was the same as the person in the room. I could not speak. "She is larger," he said simply. I looked at him. "I'm not easy. I work constantly. I have never built a life with someone from a different world than mine." "Neither have I," he said. "Does that stop you? You see what I carry?" I said. "Yes." "And you stayed?" "Seeing what someone carries," he said quietly, "is not a reason to leave. It is a reason to help them hold it." I made a choice that night I had not planned for. Not the safest choice. Not the most logical one. The true one. And 1 year later, standing at the edge of the Han River in a ceremony that blended Ghanaian Kent with Korean hanbok, with my mother crying in the front row and Seoul lit up behind us, I said the only vow that mattered. You're the first person who made me want to build something for myself. Something that is ours. If this story made you feel something, subscribe, like this video, and drop a comment telling me which moment broke you open. And share this with someone who needs to hear it. Being strong and being loved are not opposites. They never were.